we're about to make, well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe they're watching us. And the thing that upsets me is they have 3 million, the multi-stream service that we use has 3 million users, and we're in the top 1%. We're in the top 3% in their three main categories, top 1% and two. And I can't get anything done with these people. So we're just going to have to create our way out of it. Okay, we're live, so you can share. Let's give it about 60 seconds, and then normally we would play the intro at this time, but we're not allowed to do that at this time, which is kind of disturbing.
I'd say, do you want me to sing? But you probably don't want me.
You can, yeah, go ahead. I'm all for that. Let's do it. Yes, sir. So we're having the Soulogy Fest in Sedona, 28th, 29th, 30 of May. And Eric Rankin Smith is the first presenter that has agreed to present. So we're excited about that. Yeah, that was Morgan. Did you see her?
Hi, Morgan. Morgan came.
We just started. You want to say hi to everybody? We just started. Yeah.
Hey, Morgan.
Yeah. So yeah, we got Julie in the house, the Soulogy cosmologist. Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah, cosmologist.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be presumptuous, but you have a very unique. Well, you have more than one, actually. You're not just the cosmologist. You have your finger on quite a few different things, right? You know, I know grid work in the crystals, yoga, raising starseed children, and lots of different things. And not to mention, you got a great personality, and you're just you're cool, down to earth.
Thanks, Todd.
So it's good to see you again. It's been a long time no see.
Yeah.
Hope to see you at the Soulogy Fest. We'll talk about that later. It'd be great to have you there as a presenter.
Fabulous.
And yeah. So I know we haven't talked since what? Last time we talked, it was me, you, and Hung, right? Or was it me and you?
Maybe you and I.
I can't remember. How are we supposed to remember this stuff?
Time is less and less relevant.
I know it is. It really, really is. It no doubt. And we make jokes about it, but there's, I checked in with Morgan this morning. So we left on Saturday afternoon, drove 2 days, and came to my hometown Monday. And so we're staying at a friend's. Thank you very much, Chanda Sparkles. And this is the Sparkles studio, by the way. She's got some history in radio and TV, so she's setting up a studio. I'm going to help her get all the tech stuff worked out. But so, it's been kind of there's been all these. Well, first of all, the Schumann was off the charts, for like a continuous period of time. There was a geomagnetic cyclone that came through when we left. And I'm telling you, I got hit from the get-go. So all these things were aligning: family, grid work, retracing my steps, and we're going all through these cities where I've lived and worked, and it's just a lot, right? And so anyway, I asked Morgan. I checked in on Morgan this morning, and I had just kind of see her come and go, and she went for a walk, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I feel like we just went through a trip, and we landed in another dimension." And so this goes back to what you were saying. This has occurred before. This is a big one, and it's still going on. And I know it's not just us, but every time these leaps occur, the one thing that I notice, the second main thing I notice, is the diminishment of the stress or pressure of time, of linear time. So I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, well, particularly right now, we're like coming out of it a little bit. We've been heavily in the influence of Saturn, and Saturn is known of like father time, Kronos, keeper of time, and so after the Jupiter-Saturn alignment that happened on the solstice, December 21st, there was a whole bunch of coding with the planets. So coding means like anytime two bodies, celestial bodies, get near each other in the sky, it's kind of like, like, why do we get together? Like, why do I come on your show? Because it's like, it's illustrious to exchange information, right? And codes and like, so like the planets, the stars do that too. So that's, from my point of view, when they're near each other in the sky, they're code exchanging all the time. So after Saturn and Jupiter were together, they like, went apart a little bit from each other, but then the sun, so they move relatively slowly, but the sun catches up with them. But so there was a Pluto and the sun alignment, then Jupiter. I know, speaking of nonlinear, I have the dates, but it was the sun aligned to Jupiter and then to Saturn. And Saturn, it was like the 14th. It was all in January, and it's already happened. But when we got to that, where the sun and Saturn came together, it was like, that was like the super squish of time. Like in my house, it manifested as like sleep cycles where like one of my family members reversed daytime and nighttime. Like it was sleeping by day and up at night.
Yeah.
Just like in general. So the timeline erasing, timeline merging. I feel like the Saturn sometimes governs that. But so it's been particularly when the sun and Saturn conjunct each other or come close together, like all bets are off for time, even more so than in other cases.
Well, that Jupiter Saturn thing that was an MFER, man. I mean, that was like we started on the 12-12,
right?
And then the 12-21 came, and we had, I can't even remember the details, but we went and put our hands together. So it would have been after midnight the 20th, so it was on the 21st, and man, I don't know what happened, but it was mind blowing, and it's been mind blowing ever since. So what's happening right now? Because I've seen on this trip, I haven't been on Facebook, but I've seen, I saw several people putting up pictures of the Schumann for like 3 or 4 straight days and saying it's still going, right? And then I saw something about 6 planets, this or that. Of course, Mercury retrograde, which visited me personally yesterday. and then I saw something about the last time this happened was when we came out of the Dark Ages. Like, so there's like some major stuff going on. Can you give us a weather report?
Yeah, I have a certain bandwidth of information that's streamed my way that I'm like delighted to be on here today because I get to like fulfill my gatekeeping role of sharing the information. And so thank you so much for having me on.
Far out.
So, what's pinging me, so I've learned this the last many years, but at the end of, when we switch the calendar year, it's a great time to like look forward. And it's usually when I like look at the charts and look at the alignments for the upcoming year. So when I did that last year, at the end of 2019 into 2020, I saw this, that Venus was going to come. I remember I was on your show. I was looking back, like we have this cool pattern that you and I go through too. So I get to come on in the beginning of February. Right. Last February I came on and I was talking a lot about the Venus, how it was going through the Pleiades. Remember that? And like in the translation. So that happened and that's all cool. And we can talk more about that.
Is that going on now?
Well,
is there some kind of sacred sexual erotic frequency happening right now?
Well, I'll explain it. So let me flow through. So just that happened last year, and last year was pretty much dominated, in my point of view, of Venus energies. Yeah. The Venus and the moon did a lot of getting together in the sky, and like the Venus and the moon would code, and then Venus went through the Pleiades, and that had very specific action, which we'll talk about. But at the end of December, after the conjunction, my windows are like, so I get to come into my inner space, and I was like, okay, I'm going to like give the big view of what's happening for 2021. And it was so cool because I saw that Mars, everything that Venus did last year, Mars is doing this year. So Mars is the one that's like getting really close to the moon, and the moon, not when it's full or new, but more like in half phase, like crescenty moon, waxing. And Mars is making a steady progression through Aries and into Taurus So I want to
Okay.
say this because questions come up for this every time,
Right.
and I'm fine to answer them. But
Yeah.
wait. So if you talk to an astrologer, they'll
Yeah.
tell you what houses are in, and
Yeah.
like that's a different vernacular or a different alignment than where the actual planets are in the stars in the sky.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm talking about astronomical. So I'm not an astrologer per se.
Right.
So because every time some astrologer will get on, no, I thought Taurus, I thought Mars is in blah blah blah, Sagittarius is like, and I'm saying it's in Aries. So I'm strictly talking about constellations and where we see, because like as a coder that works with star codes, it's about like the visuals in the sky and connecting with the light. Does that
I
make
have
sense?
I have an observation. I need some clarification.
Okay.
And then I want you to keep going. So you said last year was Venus was the active one.
Yes.
And Venus is feminine, right? And so now you're saying it's the same thing's happening and Mars is active, right?
Yes.
So which is masculine. And my observation or my reflection on that, and I don't know if there's a connection, but I remember we've been talking about divine feminine, divine, for a long time, but there was a huge surge in the divine feminine energy last year.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be a huge surge occurring of the divine masculine energy. So
absolutely. Yes, I was hoping, I figured you would observe as I have.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And I can confirm that for sure. It does seem like the Mars.
No wonder I feel so frisky, man. I don't know what the hell
Mars awakening. Buckle up, Buttercup. I put in my blog. So last year, Venus went through the Pleiades constellation and actually inside of it and lit it up from within and became this diamond action. So as I was tuning in and, I knew for myself and how is this information valuable for anybody else? How is it going to affect us? So what Mars is in Pleiades? What does it have to do with us human beings here on Earth, right? That's always our essential question. And honestly, last year when it happened, I could, I'm not a predictor or projector forward or say oh, this is going to happen on this date. I can see where the alignments are going to be, but I don't think we really know what that means or how it's going to unpack for us until we live through it.
Right.
We're more on the embodiment path now. That's my personal take. So if I talk about how Venus, that moving through Taurus anyway, and the constellation of Taurus is often the physical body, it's like the bull, it's the earth sign. It has a lot of body effect. So I feel really last year trained me to work even more elegantly and more masterfully this year with the Mars stuff. Because Venus, watching it all happen, now in hindsight, I can say, now we finally get to use our 2020 hindsight, which we thought was 2020
good for something,
a lot of things. But so it really created quite an activation. So when anything codes with the Pleiades, if you go to any culture, if you go to the plains of Wyoming, you'll talk to the natives, indigenous cultures there, and they'll talk about the Devil's Tower, and the scratch it, or you can go to India and they'll talk about the Kritas. But the Pleiades are always human beings that were 7 sisters, sometimes they're 7 brothers, sometimes they're 7 maidens, but they're in a harrowing situation, and to save them, they get turned into stars. So that mythology of the Pleiades is becoming a star. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, now in hindsight, I can see the effect of this planet and the alignment going through, be it Venus or be it Mars, is it's going to have this massive recoding effect on our light bodies or our star bodies.
Oh, wow.
So last year, people that I'm sure people know, Tom Kenyon or anyone else that works with the Hodon, or there's a lot of people that work with Venus, and the shape of Venus was pretty, it's an octahedron. It's the double pyramid on top of each other. So that Venus energy was the diamond energy. If you talk about a solid structure,
right?
Structure,
right.
So then this December, when I was casting forward and looking into 2021, I didn't have at my fingertips that answer for Mars. I was so in my intuitive gut sense, as someone who pays attention to these things, I was Mars has to do with pentagons. I know Mars has to do with pentagons, has to do with the 5. Plus we're in this 2021 as a 5 year. So for me, what I see in 2021 is, that, is it Leonardo da Vinci?
Leonardo da Vinci.
And the Venice, the man, the 5-pointed star.
Yeah. That's
Like the sun.
Yeah. With those arms out.
We're in very much a 5 coding year, which means to me it's like the 5 elements and working through that stuff. But so then I was like, okay, what does that really have to do with Mars? I don't know a direct link. So I started researching because that's what I like to do. And so I found several incredible things along the way. And one, when I finally put the aha pieces together and where the Pentagon and Mars come together.
Right.
I'll start with my theory or hypothesis conjecture of what's going to happen to our collective and individual light bodies this year.
Okay.
Whereas last year we had the octahedron diamond coding.
Okay.
This year we're going to work with a dodecahedron. A dodecahedron is a 12-sided, like a soccer ball made out of pentagons that has 12 sides.
Holy shiitake mushrooms, man. That sounds pretty powerful.
So that's one of the platonic solids. So I knew I wanted to come on and talk about this. So I've been furiously writing blog posts this week, fastly. Because I was like, okay, first I have to explain to people what a platonic solid is. So I'm going to put all this underneath, in our.
Right.
So I have on my website, which is innerspacehealing.org, I have a lot of this stuff cataloged and written about. So because, you can just say platonic solids and people maybe have heard what that is. Some people are very educated in it. But if you want to hear a little bit more about that, I have that written up.
Right on.
One of them is that, so let's just talk about the dodecahedron. I have one over there, but dodecahedron.
Dodecahedron, which is looks like a soccer ball with a bunch of pentagons.
Yeah, that's
the pentagons. The pentagons are the
faces.
Okay, the face. All right. Okay. Dodecahedron.
Here's my camera.
Right there. Yeah, here. Let me blow you up. Hang on.
Don't blow me up, Todd.
There you go. Wow. Yeah, that looks powerful. What is the influence or of the dodecahedron?
Well, this is what we're going to unpack this year. So that's that was my ponderance too. And then what does it have to do with Mars? So I was just researching and reading about things. And when you do intuitive research, part of it, some of it's, things that we see, feel, sense in meditation or when we're tuning in and connecting. And then some of it's when we're, typing or, looking on Google and searching or reading. So I came upon this work by a mathematician and astronomer, Johannes Kepler. He was Kepler. So Kepler has this really cool, it's the Mysteria Cosmographica. Basically what he did, one of his big works, I think he published it in 43, something like that. He was looking for this connection between, so he was alive at the time where Copernicus had just talked about switching our view from a geocentric model to a heliocentric model. Geocentric meaning Earth is the center of the universe.
Right.
Heliocentric means we all revolve around the sun, which we take that for granted these days. But that was a really huge paradigm shift at that time where, a lot of the stuff in astronomy, everything revolves around the Earth started breaking down as they could see more, as they, were developing more. So this is part of like where it ties into like ascension and descension too, and the cycles of the yugas and like the forgetfulness. You know, if we go back to like any culture, ancient Egypt, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient India, ancient, South America, like all those people, when we were back in the other golden ages, people had all this information, right? We've just had that cycle of forgetting. And now we're back into this cycle of ascension where we're remembering. So this stuff is revealing itself as we go.
Right.
So it was right after a Saturn. This is where we're bringing back to the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. So Kepler was giving a talk, and while he was lecturing about the Saturn-Jupiter alignment that we just experienced in December.
Okay.
When he was doing it, he had this like epiphany moment of like, oh, I think he had been trying to find order. So one of the stopping points back in the 1500s to switch the paradigm to a heliocentric view was the church and religion and theology. They liked the earth being the center.
Right.
So he was trying to find, and like there was a divine order to that was pleasing to the theologians and the religious folks. So he was trying to like support Copernicus's work and prove, like, find this divine order in the planets, but with the sun at the center. Does that make sense?
Right.
So he was trying to prescribe, he was trying to do it mathematically, and we don't have to dive into that too much. But so when he had this aha moment, he had been trying to do it with polygons, like 2-dimensional polygons.
Right.
He's like, oh, wait, what if I try the platonic solids? So he went home after his research thing, and Plato had like set these out. Now we can say, you know, there was people.
Is that why that's why they call it Platonic? It's because Plato came up?
Plato was the one who said, like, these are the building blocks of life. These 5 shapes make everything, like the crystalline structure.
I wonder how in the hell Plato came across.
There was,
but I guess
there's many Islamic astronomers that had predated him. They just like people had laid the.
Okay, so it was there, which some of his information he openly says where he got it from. You know, like I was just curious because, and you're right, because there not only was there some Islamic astronomers, how do you say that? Astronomers. But also there's a bunch of other stuff that those guys did, including some of the world maps, which included
that's what I mean about the, like, you know, we talk about the Dark Ages, or the, you know, we're back in this ascension, like we're moving into the golden age.
So Kepler, when was
back to Kepler? So
when was Kepler? When was he?
Early 1500s.
Okay, so that was coming out. The Dark Ages was what, 12 to 1400, something like that.
Something like that. But I mean more like ascension wise, like planetary. You know, yes. But like, there's a lot of.
Well, that was a Renaissance.
Because if we go back to, like, you know, if you go back to Mayan culture, they knew, we just forgot in the process. So anyway, let's get back to the Kepler thing. So he went back and he was like, had this aha moment, but I found it, because I'm a geek like that, I found it really potent that it was during Saturn-Jupiter conjunction.
Right.
You know, and then like 2 weeks later, this information came to me too. You know, I was like, oh, there's just a poetic beauty there that I geek out on. So that's
real though. That's validation.
Yeah, it's true, right? Yeah. It's like the planets told me this. So he took the Earth, and then, so there's 2 different words that are like technical: circumscribed or inscribed. Not circumcised, circumscribed. Which means like draw around it with all the edges touching. Draw around it closely, right? So he took
inscribed. What's inscribed?
He took the Earth and drew a dodecahedron around it. And then at the edges of it, like on all the edges, is the orbit of Mars. And he's like, all right, it worked for this one platonic solid. And then he took the
I see what you're saying.
Tetrahedron around Mars. Yeah. And then what's outside of that is the orbit of Jupiter. And then around that, he put the cube. Mathematically, he's doing all this, right? So he like drew the cube and he's like, it works. And then inside, between the Earth and Venus, is the isosahedron, I believe. And then, anyway, whatever. And then,
this is like, I mean, I just got to tell you, this is like one of the first times, and it may be because I'm slow or something, I don't know, but that I've actually, and I can understand, or something was explained to me where I can actually visualize why the sacred geometry and the platonics are so important.
This was, you know, and I've been like geeking out on this stuff my whole life, but this model just presented itself to me in December, you know, a couple months ago. So then he put the 5th one inside between Mercury and Venus. So it's like, basically there's this divine order that could maybe replace and help the whole, I called him, in another blog post that I did, I called him the paradigm disruptor. Because, like, you know, we're like so massively in need of that right now on our globe, right? So like if we go back to these paradigm disruptors but it was him nesting the platonic solids within the orbits of the planets that really helped, you know, the powers that be, the church, the theologians to like be like, okay, like maybe the sun is really the center of the universe, solar system after all.
Maybe we don't know everything.
And there's so I'll talk to like, you know, a lot of us, I'm sure that are people that are listening to this have either played with their chakras or do chakra healing. I'm sure a lot of people are healers themselves. So for myself, like, you know, 20 years ago when I started doing energy healing, you know, you would do, people often come and they're like, oh, is my third chakra blocked? Is my fourth, you know, like, can you unblock my, and it's never been like that for me. It's not like one is blocked and the other one. There's a lot of like the passageway, you know, they work as a coherent unit when they're working well. And oftentimes it's the passageway between them, you know, between the third and the fourth. Like I want to get from my anger, frustration level, like up to that heart center where compassion and love.
Oh, that's what you mean by playing with chakras? I like to play with Morgan's chakras, but
well, that's another show, Todd.
hey, she has a question, and this actually, I don't know why I brought this question up, but I remember something. Maybe it was her channel or something, but in fact, it was. So she said, do you feel that there are new geometric solids forming at the moment for new creation? Do you feel like that there's new sacred geometry?
Well,
does sacred geometry, are there new sacred geometry?
Like upgrade with us? Is that what we're asking?
Well, I mean, not like just now, but like through any growth spurt, you know, in the universe, any new creation. I wonder. I guess we would.
Well, there's a whole bunch of other, like the 5 platonic solids are just like one little subset. There's a whole thing about like Archimedes solids and truncated Archimedes solids. I think that's, I don't necessarily want to trudge into all that right at this moment because I'm trying to make a point about Mars, but like,
yeah, I got you.
But yes, so one of the things that, I mean, you had Sandra Walter on many weeks ago, but she was, when I watched her show diligently when she was on with you, like I do all of her stuff. And, you know, she was talking about like, we're moving through this different band of the universe, or like where our solar system is circling the center of the galaxy. Like we're in a section of that pathway that's heavily light encoded. Okay. That has a lot of photon streams and like cosmic streams. And you know, when you're like, we talk about being in spirals of things, and like we all go through spirals of things in our lives, but then like we're always like approaching it from like a wider angle, and like, you know, we will revisit things, but we revisit them with a bigger vista, you know, like a wider expanded view. That's happening too. And as we ascend, like I feel like we're spiraling up. And you know, I've heard several people, not just Sandra, but talk about like that we're in a different section of the universe, or a different, you know, our galaxy is also, so our solar system is moving through our galaxy, but our galaxy is also moving and circumnavigating through the universe. So maybe our whole galaxy is in a part of the universe that has a different light encodement. That's what I see. You know, like there's different light streams. So light comes through as geometry, color, sound, information, all simultaneously. That's like the quantum thing.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Like
your explanation makes sense. That
so
whether it's go ahead.
So so I found that like the Kepler thing was just like, I was in like geek heaven. I was like, oh, like I was like finding that in his, because I could kind of see it in meditation, Cosmographica, like the solids. And maybe I had seen it before in my travels, but like it really clicked in for me in late December, early January. And then I had this feeling of like, okay, so if last year we had the Venus coding with the Pleiades, and the Pleiades help us to create, you know, they work with our light bodies very heavily. And if we're working through if we're downloading like a different geometric structure in our light body, this is going to be a pretty cool / intense year. So if we go, so there's between the Earth's orbit and Mars, we go through a dodecahedron almost to get to Mars. So when I looked at the alignments, I'm going to talk about February 18th. So Moon and
February
Mars.
18th.
That's coming up next week, next Thursday. Moon, Mars, and Pleiades will be in our night sky, evening sky. And the Pleiades Mars doesn't get all the way up to the Pleiades until March 4th, 3rd, 4th, depending where you are on the planet. But on February 18th, this is where like the astronaut super geek in me came out, and I was like almost salivating. I was so excited when I found this one. So we launched, I don't know if 2020 had a lot of stuff in it to pay attention to, but on July 31st, NASA launched the Perseverance Mars rover.
That's right.
Guess what day it's landing on Mars, Todd?
Guess what?
Guess what day it's landing on Mars?
February 18th.
Damn straight.
You can make this shift up.
No, right? So the Perseverance Mars rover is landing in the Jezero crater, and they chose that particular crater because it used to be a lake and it used to be a riverbed. So that this rover, like a lot of other missions have gone to Mars, there's actually 3 different, one from, I think, the United Arab Emirates, and one from China. And then
you're right. I picked
all landing on Mars this month, right? Or what 2 are orbiting.
I wonder what that's all about.
So it's like a gate where we open gateways with our space travel too. But anyway, maybe get to the Jezero crater. They chose, the people who designed this mission at NASA chose this crater to land on, because the purpose of this mission for Perseverance rover is to determine if there was ancient life on Mars. Like they're like going there to find that out, which is cool. We haven't ever done that on purpose like that before.
Yeah.
So that's satisfied. I was like, okay, so I'm calling it the Mars Pleiades corridor. It's when humans, I noticed this first, I think it was when Elon Musk launched the Dragon X car. He launched it from California. And when we do like space travel, this is like even more esoteric. Like we're creating actually a gateway. Like the scientists are, just by the scientists going through and coding the space corridor, the travel, like you know how careful they have to work to get a rocket to get to Mars on a certain day. You know, they have to launch when Mars is close enough to Earth, and there's like, you know, there's so much to it, right? But I saw, you know, sometimes we'll see the things that are incoming. Like we always talk about stargates and gateways as like us receiving light.
Mm-hmm.
The first time it was like so crystal clear to me that I was like, oh, we make like we broadcast back. Like of course we know that, but it's almost like you can see the dot.
Well, it's like an embodiment. It's because it's a physical thing you're talking about.
Yeah, like
we know that we receive from our team or whatever, and we know we transmit back. They're gaining from us as we are, but you're actually describing a physical embodiment or a physical.
Just the act of those scientists carving out that pathway and doing the mathematics, and it's like it's already like drawn a line in the sand, if you will. To like,
well, it's
opening a gate.
Yeah, it's an energetic force that is initiated in a physical realm where normally, because we all do, you know that because you work the grid and all that, we energetically create in the ethers and then it takes form. So it's like backwards.
Yes, Holly. I'd say that's quantum entanglement. So I didn't answer anyone else's question, but hers just popped up. But it's like, it is entanglement. But so anyway, so this is all happening. So just the fact that the Perseverance is landing on Mars, the day that it's moving with the moon near the Pleiades, that means something too to me. Like that's a geek out moment. And then I want to talk to you because we always talk about Aldebaran when I come on, because that's your
man. It's like I'm like, and I just had another experience with it about 10 days.
So if you look at the constellation, Aldebaran is the eye of the bull. The Pleiades are kind of in the, I don't know, the tenderloin, the shank, if you will. But so after the Mars moves, so it's March 3rd and 4th that happens, that Mars gets closest to the Pleiades. And then it will continue its journey through Taurus, and it moves closer. And then I was looking at it, getting ready to come on and talk about it today. It's almost like Mars makes the second eye of the bull. You know how they're both like red orange. Mars looks a little redder, but the bull's going to have like these 2 red eyes.
That's crazy.
That's March.
You know, this is to me, it's like what you're talking about. You know, as I'm seeing it, it is that masculine. It's freaking powerful. It's like he's like I mean, but like that energy it's like a very powerful, and I don't mean this in a pornographic way, but a very powerful sacred sexual energy, like coming out, you know, I feel it with what you're saying and what you said earlier. So, yeah, get ready, ladies. I'm just speaking to Morgan. I'm just talking about any because I mean it feels like that. And then for you to say it's going to have two red eyes because Aldebaran is a very very orange reddish star.
So when Mars is sitting it's a March. It doesn't matter. The dates don't matter.
And they're peering at the Seven Sisters.
Yeah,
Mars is going through the Seven Sisters, cosmically copulating or whatever they do.
He's so. What does that have to do? I'm going back. I'm looping it back to the dodecahedron.
Yeah,
that's my job. But that's happening, and like all that coding is happening. But there's something my cast forward. I don't even say prediction, but like what my take on it is that we're going to be like kind of unlocking this new, or at least it's new to me, sacred geometry of the light body, and what that means exactly. It's still got to unpack, but here's the parts that I've seen is there's a significance to the 12 because it's 12 pentagons, right? So we've all got that, go back to the 12-12 and the thing and the 12 strand. It definitely has the whole 12 strand DNA /13 unified, but the 12 strand activation, it has the pentagon. And it's like, to me, it's going to be a new level of embodiment, really.
You must be saying something important because my ears are going off. So with what you're saying, I mean, just sidebar question real quick. It sounds like that at a minimum that more of the light bodies coming on board. I mean, do you? It sounds pretty provocative too. I mean, do you think that we're actually going to see some palpable evidence, scientifically speaking, biologically speaking, of the light body anytime soon?
Well, some might say we see it every day, right?
I think, yeah. It's kind of one of those questions that you get the answer as you're finishing asking.
Yeah, it's like, we are. That's like, it's ascension, brother, right? Like that is what that like. So descension is the act of our oversoul, spirit self, higher self, whatever you want to call it, like galactic self, like descending down onto the earth plane. Ascension is like raising our vibration and expanding our view and like moving up in higher vibration. So it's a constant process of both, because there's on purpose descension that you need to like, drive a car and other stuff like that. But it's happening simultaneously, but for sure, I'm curious to see, like, I wouldn't, I last year when I was looking at this shape was what goes with Venus.
Yeah.
That's
the octahedron.
Or the octahedron.
Okay.
So to say that we got squeezed in 2020 might be an understatement, right? Like, like a diamond. Like what I saw in the coding was that, it was going to be like to turn coal into a diamond. It goes deep, deep underground and gets tremendously squeezed. And I'm curious. Like, I'm excited to see the unfoldment.
I know
that all these ahas couldn't come together with me, so I'm still kind of decoding it and figuring it out. But it seems fun.
Well, I mean, I saw a picture the other day of somebody I know that the upper, and it was during the day like this, right? And the upper, like the shoulders up, or maybe chest up, was all light. Like it was all like just a huge starburst. Yeah. And I've actually seen a couple of pictures like this before, and then of course these pictures people take where they either have the light, the different lights around them or around them here. Right?
Is that what you meant about more empirical?
Well, yeah, just like, okay. And then another thing would be like, people, you can see crystals on their arm. I remember when we had lunch with Sandra in Sedona and she saw Morgan's arm. She's like, oh my God, you can see your, I don't pick up on all that stuff, but I'm just saying it sounds like what's happening astronomically is, part of it, in part translating into more physical evidence of the transformation carbon to light to crystalline.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yes, for sure. I think it's both. I think the light body is revealing itself more and more, but it's also our skill sets that are coming online more and more. So we're able, like, it's always there. It's just like, I have the skills and the refined vision to see.
So, but these astronomical movements and alignments and such, they I guess in a way they kind of tell our story, don't they? Like in other words, there's certain times that certain things are not available. Like for the most part, let's just say, like you were talking about with the memory wipes and all that, right? But there's the astronomical movements kind of are the spiral, like, right? I mean, because I remember, like, you're talking about Mars, and where it's located in the night sky. I can remember over the last 2 or 3 years, as you were saying, that it was happening at the same time, right? Of the year.
I don't remember this.
I remember in 2018. Oh, you know what? It wouldn't be the same time of the year. It was around August, September. I remember Mars being very visible, and I remember telling Morgan, she was in Australia, and I think she was kind of upset with me because I said, every time I walk outside, Mars is looking at me. What does that mean? She goes, the universe is giving you a brown eye.
Oh, Morgan.
Said, what does that mean? Said,
they definitely do influence us, like, for the whole, like, the end to late summer to December, when I would, like, leave inner space here and then go to drive home. Like, Saturn and Jupiter were, like, kind of there for us, right? They were our evening buddies. We'd see them every night. We'd be like, oh, look at their, like, they were, like, kind of in the line, and then, like, watching them closer and closer. But, like, now, when a planet, any planetary body or star, goes close to the sun, we don't see it anymore because it's lost in the sun's glare, because the sun is so much brighter and closer. So we just, like, didn't see Saturn and Jupiter for a while. Now they're coming out as morning planets. So there's another, and it's like, because the sun kind of, like, obscures our view of them. For me, those times are potent. Even though we don't see them in the night sky, we're coding with them really differently, because the sun, like, to me, the sun kind of picks up on their energy, or it's almost like two suns shining on us. Like, when we have Jupiter and the sun both in the same spot in the sky, it's like having two flashlights shining on the same piece of paper. It has more light coded to it. So they just affect us differently. But the human soul, to, like, gaze at things in the stars, in the sky, in the night sky, like, that's our deep ancestry. That's our deep wisdom.
And to me, it's like like a projector, like a projection of what's inside of me. When I like really try to tune in, which it hasn't been very often, but certainly with Aldebaran and Orion and Sirius, I can like locate them, right? And then the other thing, that as I'm talking to you, this is why I love talking to you, because it always triggers, like, revelation. So, and again, ask the question, and by the time you finish the question, you get the answer, right? So as I was taking in what you were saying, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. We're always trying to understand things and comprehend things through the human comprehension, right? That container. Maybe we're not even transforming. Maybe that's not actually what's happening, because, let's say that you got the human body, and then the light body, and then the other etherical bodies, right? Maybe what we're experiencing is just all the bodies coming in to the one body. So there's really not. I mean, in the physical, experience, maybe it looks like a transformation, but and the reason I also thought of that too, because Morgan just made a comment how we have watched our light bodies do some great things, and the human body feels it, right? I mean, I don't know about her, but I know for me that wasn't happening a year ago, 2 years ago. And now it's like, pretty interesting stuff, especially when you're conscious about it and you can actually direct the light body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So pretty interesting.
It's kind of like, I mean, there's so much to say about it. You said
Yeah.
one thing. You said like I can feel it. I want to go back to what you said. You said I could feel it in here because like we are the stargates.
Right.
They're
Right.
not anywhere but in. So in the other thing that Saturn coded in for me, this was last January when we had the Saturn alignment. Like I saw, I've always seen it because I kind of grew up in the yoga philosophy of the energy body, where you'd have to talk about the koshas or the sheaths, like concentric rings of your
Yes.
energy body. And like the first
That's what I'm talking
your
about.
physical body. And
That's
then
what I'm
they
talking
talk about the
about.
pranamaya kosha. They call them the koshas. And then the vijnanamaya, like the food stuff. There's a food sheath, and then there's the physical, the prana sheath, and then there's the mental sheath, and then then it goes out to the bliss body. So now we're even those, but they had 5 sheaths, which really correspond to maybe the 5 chakras, and now we're moving up to, if you were talking about it from chakra theory, you were in the 6th. Some people call it the 6th dimension. I don't necessarily use that vernacular, but we're moving up into like the light body phase. So that's like the next rung out from the energy sheath is the light sheath. Or instead of, we're here in the throat chakra, or in the 5th is more about sound and,
Yeah, you know what? I'm with you on that, what you just said
so
too.
now we're evolving or ascending up into like where we see things, or you can think of it like I like to think of it as the collapsible like camp cup, where you like, we're all one cup, right? But you can like they're different rings, and like that allows us to, it collapses down into one being. Like that's our being. Like of course we're collapsed down, but then we're also expanded and concentric ringed. So it's really like vantage points, or sometimes, in the meditations, we'll teach meditations of like, you go up an elevator to get to this level, you move through your
Oh
energy.
yeah.
Does that answer your question at all? I don't know what you're asking.
Absolutely did. And I just want to say too, I agree with you, not because it makes me cool or something, but there's been so much talk, and I know it's just been a method for people to try to understand, but like 3D and 5D. But man, as the days go by, I realize we're not playing in 5D. I mean, this is like 6D and 7D and 8. I mean, there's at least in terms of what's available. You know what I mean? And like what you just said a minute ago about 5D being, sound and vibration and such as, there's other stuff that we're playing in too. I feel anyway. I'm not saying that's the gospel truth, but I'm just saying that
No, absolutely. It's very.
I become aware of it talking to people like you, and then of course through my own experience.
And then one vantage point is to look at, we talk about unlocking the different, or reuniting, maybe a better way, unlocking the different strands of the DNA and moving into the 12th. Once we get that 12th strand.
I like the collapsible cup thing, the concentric circle, with that 3-dimensional thing, the image of it, because it covers everything. You're never not that, right? Where are you playing, right? Where are you?
You need that's the whole container. You just like what's your vantage point?
Right.
Do you want to look at it from my human body sac sheath, or do I want to look at it from the rivers of life that pour through me? Like if I'm Yoda, I'm talking about the force, and so I'm in prana, then I'm in that sheath, right? Or I want to go move into another, and the 3rd sheath has more about like your eyesight and your vision. That's where we get the visuals.
Yeah.
And you get starting to see things, and colors come into play in that.
Have you written a book?
Have I written a book? Oh, I have like 3 in my
You got some of those too.
I got some of those. Thank you, Todd. That's a nice thing to say.
No. I'm saying you mean you've got them, but you haven't actually.
There's no. I have the like.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it would be a
assembling.
I think it would be a unique read. Like what you talk about. I know others talk about it, but not to the extent that you do. I mean, I haven't seen it out there, not like that. It's a good perspective, excellent perspective. And and the funny thing is
down to the practical too, like
it does. And the funny thing I've noticed talking to you through the comments and messages I get, that even like for me, like the first time I'm like going, okay, now what? Okay, I'm listening and I'm not getting everything at the human comprehension, but I'm getting it, right? You can see it in the comments. People are like, I get it, you know? Yeah. So you do a good job with it.
Thanks, Todd. So back to the dimensions, but there's like infinite. So we say like, oh, we're interfacing, or we're playing with, or we're activating our 12th strand of the DNA. But that's just like, it's not the end game. Then you just like hack 12 to 24, and then all the way to the 144, and then to the 100. It's like, it's nesting dolls. Oh, like that's some say chaos theory, or that's fractalization. It's like it goes to infinite. It goes out to the infinite, and it goes in to the infinite.
You know what I always wonder? I always wonder, because I always say, okay, why are we 99% of the time conscious with less than 1% of our multidimensional consciousness in our awake state, as a human? In other words, we're here. We're rooted here. I always wonder if our other multidimensional aspects have that same reality, where they're 100, they're like always that particular aspect. I don't know. It's just me being weird.
Well, it's cool. Like when I was delving into this, whatever, a handful of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and like this, I kind of, astrologer would do your chart. Like I did my like soul aspect chart, or like my starseed. It's like, where do I have these 12 different DNA lineages, or starseed lineages, or galactic lineages that come through me as me? That's the other thing. I think if we go back to the dodecahedron, I said the 12 strand, but it has the the diaspora of the 12 tribes, and like or like if you go to the Atlantis mythology, the 12 crystals, or Lemurian technology, if you go to the 12 solar discs that were like dispersed. The thing is, like, we used to have a time where the human knowledge was like unified, and we were in the flow, and we remembered everything. And then in all cultures, they talk about the keeping the knowledge alive during the dark ages time, but like had to separate it out into different tribes, or different regions of the earth, or different galaxies.
Right.
So like, are we coming back to that unified field? For sure.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the collapsible cup.
It is.
The concentric circles. I've always, even before, I guess I don't know how to. Well, I started reading these type of books on these types of subjects about at 21, and I wasn't able to have conversations like this, so I wasn't really developing, say, the insight that we've all begun to do because of the growing, conversations and so on. But I always remember seeing everything in concentric circles.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that wordless explanation, no matter what I was looking at, I could always see it that way. But now that you mentioned the collapsible cup, that even makes more sense, because it's got that extra dimension to it. There you go. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I said too, it's like the spiral, that spiral is like the icing on the cake, because you can be on that line, let's say on that timeline, if that's the right word, but you can be on it at any of these points, right? As in the spiral.
It's great. Yeah. And it's all vantage points. It's all, so we're, stargates are a lot of things to a lot of different people. They are a lot of things. Yeah. And we just simplify things to talk about, they're wormholes or doorways to like walk through. They're spatial, but they're time also. Like they're time doorways. Just even like stars, like looking at the stars, like we all know this, but even the closest star, it's like how many, 1.8 light years away. It's like, so that's like anytime you see starlight, you're traveling back in time. You just are.
Yes.
And it's like space, the space-time continuum is real.
Explain to me.
The fabric of time is just as real as the fabric of space.
Say that again. The fabric of time is just as real as the fabric of space. Okay, explain something to me, because I'm one of those, the only dumb questions are when you don't ask. I've heard the term, and I could go Google it, but I like to hear things differently. So what exactly is a space-time continuum?
That's a great question, Todd. So one of the reasons for me is like growing up a scientist, I could never get into like what the ascension community talks about, the 3D, the 4D, the 5D. Like I can't use that terminology at all because that space in my brain is already filled with what physics means by 3D, 4D, 5D. So I'm talking right now just from like a physics point of view, not from a awareness dimension point of view. But it's like, so we have a dimensional, like one dimension is a dot.
Yeah.
2 dimensions, you draw 2 dots and you make a line between them.
Right.
3-dimensional is like you go up into volume, right? So you're in
right.
a cube instead of a flat square.
Right.
And then the 4th dimension after that is time. So like that concept,
which doesn't have a dot or a line. It's just kind of a container.
Like a container. In physics class, you would draw like a 3-dimensional, the XYZ coordinates, moving through a box. And then you'd take those XYZ coordinates and you'd move them like they move forward. So we don't have a lot of great, I can draw out real quick structures of what like the time dimension looks like. We just like live through it. It's almost like your 3-dimensional world this second and we rebuild it.
To me, it's like, okay, because I know that it doesn't work based on, it's kind of like the Earth being the center. It doesn't work based on our humanness, right? But so to me, it sounds like what you're saying is, so you have the the XYZ, and you take a snapshot, right? And in that snapshot, it isn't still, it's actually movement within the snapshot itself, and that's a block of time, maybe.
Yeah,
is I guess what I'm trying to say. That's what it sounds like.
It's hard to visualize, but like space time is the snapshot.
Almost like a dream. You have a lucid dream. It's a snapshot. It's movement. Meaning it's not just a snapshot. It's more like video. And you wake up and it's over. That's what it feels like. Like, I don't know if that's what it is, but to me, that's what it feels like.
But so we're used to time being one directional and one, like it progresses forward. Yeah. And we're not as used to, I can drive from my house to my workplace and drive from my workplace back to my house. That's you're going forth and back in space.
Right.
Where were you really only as humans used to moving forward in time, but you can move forward and backwards just as easily as you can through space. It's just not a skill set that we've unlocked.
You mentioned the thing about the rover, right? The rovers, because I did read it. It was UAE and China. I didn't realize we were all doing it at the same time. So like some kind of great space race or something. But
I think when I read it, it's because there's a window of launch. That's when the Earth.
Okay. Because of that would make sense. It's so hard to necessarily. It's so hard to. It's so hard to figure out what the hell's real and what's not real because, this is an institution that's lied to us for years. I mean, but you can, I guess everything you can kind of discern it for yourself. But what I was going to ask you was, okay, so you got the information about the rovers. We know we've explored Mars before. You hear the Israeli ex-spacehead guy who's in his, I believe, late 80s, early 90s, who came out and said that we already have a base on Mars with Martians and with Americans. My question is, this is my question. Do you think that something like that is true? And my main question is, it would seem to me that what you just described about time, that time travel would be basically the essential ingredient of space travel. And when I say space travel, I mean both what we can see and what we can't, right? Like, dimensionally speaking or vibrationally speaking. Do you think that's a possibility or probability what that guy said? And B, do you feel like that time travel, what we might call time travel, would be like the basic element of traveling the cosmos?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a great question, Todd.
It just seems like it would
Like
have to
answer,
be.
but like I think we're doing it. Is that what when people talk about like, oh, I'm, either remote viewing or astral traveling or like
Yeah,
soul traveling.
that's what I mean.
That
Like
what we do?
taking,
Like
yes,
I've done that in grid work where the
yeah,
land has talked to me about the glaciers that were there
yeah,
and like Pangea, like the formation, the geology of the formation of the earth. Like we're consciousness wise, we're
yeah,
traveling back in time all the
yeah,
time. But
yeah.
we just
So,
haven't like have we done it with our bodies yet? I feel
well,
like that's
that's what I was trying to say. Okay, so let me rephrase it real quick
yeah.
because I just got it after because you helped me. Now, so we do this, right? Now we're told it's our imagination and it's not encouraged, right? I'm just wondering if this thing that we do, that we all do when we astral or we remote view or whatever it is, I wonder if there's an element of our civilization that's actually working with that and encouraging it and growing that possibility. And I wonder if what say the trip to Mars is really just a physical manifestation of getting technology to do what we actually do anyway. Does that make sense?
Time walking is what I call it.
Okay, time walking.
Like time, it's like there are people, we all have our different skill sets and different
Yeah.
things that we do. Um, and this is one of the things, we often go, whenever we chat, we often go back to Orion or to the Sasquatch.
Yeah.
But I think as we tune into that, I'd say mindset's not the right word, but that like technology or that
Yeah.
consciousness, or it's
Yeah.
like you're unlocking that aspect of your soul consciousness.
Yeah.
Like we're starting to do it more and
That
more.
makes,
Like, it'll be
that
so
makes sense.
fun when we can do it like in our human form, like take our human form with us. I
Yeah.
haven't done that yet personally, but
That makes a lot of sense to me.
oh,
And go ahead, go ahead.
no, I have one more geek thing that came through during the
Yeah.
Mars, and this is maybe he's just popping in because he's the one that already did it. But while I was reading, another like aha moment I've had in the last few weeks was about Tesla, of course. So I was like, I also felt this like there's got to be a Nikola Tesla Mars thing too. Like that was sort of like knocking me on the shoulder or knocking me on the noggin, and because I like interface with the Tesla collective quite a bit. They speak my language, I speak their language.
Right.
But so I was looking at Tesla had a lab in Colorado Springs in 1899. His thing out in Colorado Springs was a receiver. He had a Tesla receiver. He's known for a lot of things, and he's known for like sending free energy around. But in this particular time, 1899, out in Colorado Springs, he was listening. He had this big receiver, and we can talk about the technology he used to build it and blah, blah, blah. He was like on the side of a cliff on the Continental Divide, like found this, his thing was all about getting someone to pay for it for him.
Right.
He was not a man of means. So like he had an investor and he had this lab, and he was alone in his lab one night. And, speaking of geeking out, like he knew enough to know what signals were coming from what. Right. And he has, I found all this cool literature on him talking about receiving directly a signal from Mars in 1899. And sharing that publicly was one of the things that led to his, I won't say demise, but people just thinking he was like a nut job. He was like way before his time. But he received a signal and he knew it couldn't be from the sun. He knew it was like of planetary origin. Now, he wasn't necessarily saying like there are men on Mars and they're broadcasting to me, but he heard this like ping ping, and it was an ordered like three, like kind of like Morse code. It was an ordered thing that came to him.
This is for real, man, because look, first of all, he was what happened to him after that happened and other things that he came out with. Well, yeah, but he didn't stop doing what he was doing. He just didn't have the public. He wasn't supported publicly. There was a propaganda organ against him, but they were still using him. And then as an example too, like we talked about this before, but that Vril Society in Nazi Germany, they pulled in communications from Aldebaran, and the Aldebaran people, Star Family, whatever, gave them the information, gave the Nazis the information. This is all documented. And if you haven't,
I haven't gone into that.
Go check out Robert Sepper, SEPH.
Oh, okay. I've heard of his work, but
Robert, his great stuff. But anyway, his stuff is very, especially you being a scientist, because he doesn't bullshit around. But yeah, so he's got one on the Vril Society. It's fascinating.
VRLL.
VRIL. Yeah, oh. It was the story is, so there was a group of ladies who were like doing seances and stuff. They end up connecting to Aldebaran, and Aldebaran informs them, of some technological opportunities. They go to Hitler and tell Hitler, and so then they went to work for him. And there were several other, I guess, like secret groups that were plugged into the occult, plugged into a lot of things. Atlantis, they went to look for Atlantis. They went to Antarctica, and there's a lot of stuff with that. But anyway, my point is Tesla wasn't stupid. And if he's from Mars,
hearing a signal from Mars, we believe him. You and I believe him, right?
And if you get a signal from Mars, then even though you have to question why any press was given to the former head of Israel's space program, you still have to look at the possibility or probability of what was being said could be true. Because if Tesla was getting a message 120 years ago, it's certainly conceivable that 100 years later that could be a possibility. I mean, these ladies that were in the Vril Society, from the time that they got the information first coming in from their connection to Aldebaran to the time of the first UFOs being built by the Nazis was just probably a decade, if that. So I mean, there's just a lot out there that we've not been given, we haven't been privy to, but it ain't stopping us anyway, because
we're like, the highest honor we can give the way showers that have gone before us is to continue in their footsteps, right?
Absolutely.
And to continue, but it's cool. Like, I say this like ego free. It's like Tesla spent a lot of time like physically building his constructions, and like thank goodness he did. That's great. Like he was very much like I got to get this built. But really what I think what we're doing now is like we're building it all in light technology. Like I don't have to go buy steel and like I don't have to like
exactly
do things. Like I'm doing it just like what he was doing, but like doing it in the light building way. Does that make sense?
That's okay. So that's exactly what I was trying to say about the rover thing. And you were talking about opening stargates, and when they, like you were saying, when a scientist maps out the path for the rocket, they're energetically creating right there, right? Right. They're energetically. So what I was saying is maybe like, even if you look at like say the story of Atlantis, where the technology outgrew the consciousness is what they say, right? Well, or when you talk about AI. So in other words, we are made in the image, creating things that are actually a replica of our, let's say, non-physical energy, right? Our imagination, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe that's what these things are. Maybe that's what these playgrounds are. I mean, it would only make sense that, if you look at the story of Earth and you look at some of the sacred text, and even the Sumerian and all that, you basically had the creator created some species who then in turn self-appointed lesser gods, watchers, controllers, whatever you want to call them, and it just becomes this cycle of gods creating gods. I don't know, but it's just like the technology part of it to me seems to be like a physical manifestation of what we do here.
So it's cool that you bring it there, because after last week I was called to get out all my books. So I was trained heavily in a style of yoga that's a tantric based lineage, and tantra meanings like is to weave or to loom. So I've studied a lot of Kashmir Shaivism, which is probably meaningless to most people, but it's basically this region. Kashmir is a northern province.
I thought it was a Led Zeppelin song. I love that.
Yeah, it is a Led Zeppelin. You can just listen to Led Zeppelin for real, and it'll all download.
Keep going.
But so this text. These ancient texts were passed down in oral tradition and then written tradition, but they were written on like, birch and, things like that would not stand the test of time. So they were copied by the certain castes or certain orders where their like job was to keep the texts alive. And in Kashmir area of India got heavily invaded by Muslim activity. So like a lot of these texts were almost like wiped away, but like certain families like kept them, secreted away. Right. And then when the British, blah, 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 that whole area, we won't get into like the whole English Empire and what they did to India, but that there was a certain time where they put in a ruler that was a Hindu. Like, so the region of Kashmir had a Hindu king put back in, and he realized like the value of these texts. So they only recently, in the last 100 years or so, have resurfaced and been translated. And so anyway, I went back to some. So one of them is called, so these tantric texts, like they're not as famous, as you will, as like some of the ones from Egypt or some of the other ones, but those of us that are been played in them, there's one that's called The Splendor of Recognition. Right. I went and reread that last week. And I'm really going to offer, like, this is for me, I'm like, one of those moments where all your 30 years of training and research and knowledge like comes around together. And I'm going to offer a course coming up this spring about some of this, because it's like, to get the opportunity to read one of those texts, not everyone's going to take the time or do that, right. But there's a lot like we can derive from them.
That's a great idea.
But they talk about like the goddess. It's the creation and the cosmology. Like yoga got really, really interesting to me when it got cosmological. And if you go back into the Vedas, the Vimanas, like they have all these texts about the light body. Yeah. And just like the Native Americans in this continent have all the stories about the star elders and the star peoples that would come with it. Yeah. The ancient Indic texts are like rich with. Yeah. So not only do they have the technology there,
this is fascinating.
Body. Yeah. This is like all yoga. Like now, in the United States, we've turned it into like you go into a heated room and do lots of sun salutes.
Yeah, right. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. What is that called? Hot yoga or sweat your ass yoga? I wouldn't even.
Yeah. I get out just in the right. I taught yoga for 20 years, but I got out just 2012.
Before it became yuppie-ish. You got yuppie-ized.
I got out this time. So back to like ancient Vedic texts, and this little subset of tantric texts talk about light as consciousness. Like it was really exciting for me to reread.
So I think I want to tell you, I think that's a great idea what you're going to offer, because you're right. People don't read anymore, which is okay because we're changing. But the thing is, that's a great way to get the information out in a form like that. And then the other thing that you were saying about India and some of the other early civilizations, that's another reason I love Robert Sepper, because like for instance, in regard to India in the Vedas, he talks about, and this is all information that's there, right? Like that's provable, right? And he talks about how they all had blue skin.
Right.
They talk about the color of the hair. Look at the Egyptians, and there's a lot of evidence of how Ramses had red hair. And all Ireland has a myth that's based on factual records of a princess that came from Egypt. So there's all this stuff that we didn't know about. But anyway, going back to it, like the thing that you said about the cycle, the loop, or what am I trying to say? But anyway,
in India they call it the yugas.
The yugas, right? So like that information was there, whatever thousands of years ago, and we're coming back to it.
Yeah.
I mean, they had but anyway, that's one of the reasons I like him, because to me, what he does, even though he's written 4 books, he does these presentations, these productions on YouTube, right? and it's you. If you want to dig in more, you can go dig in more, but it gives you a nice amount of information, and then you make that. So I think that's a great idea what you're doing. I think that'd be really good.
Well, it's interesting that these, some of these ancient texts were either lost to the conquerors of time or invasions, or that the texts that I'm talking about in particular are like such a niche. Like people haven't even heard of them, but they weren't even available or translated until like the 50s, 60s, 70s, and now there are scholars that are carrying it on.
Yeah.
New recent translations come out.
Well, the great thing about it, like what you're going to do, what he does, what other people do, when they uncover, like say the Nag Hammadi, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right.
I mean, when that information's shared, if nothing else, it opens code in people.
Well, so this is like when people talk about the living libraries of light being unlocked right now with Ascension, like this is what we're talking about. Like they'll come through. It's like, it's okay. Some of them can come through as these epiphanies that we have in meditation, or like these, things dreams we'll have. But some of them are coming through as like, oh, I can buy this book on Amazon and like get it to my house and read it. Like that's an epiphany. That's it coming forward too. That like it's all.
And then here we go again with what I was trying to explain, which I'm not saying I'm 100%, but like the whole thing about how in these playgrounds we basically create or birth in the physical are us, which is another great example. And to your point, is the internet. The internet has accelerated it. That's an understatement. Has accelerated our ability to how much information we can take in.
Yeah, this energy exchange and information exchange. So I was talking about so we talk about either the 12 tribes being divided, or the 12 crystals of Atlantis, or the 12 sun disks of Lemuria, or like that information had to be divided up and sent away, like as a way of record keeping and like safety and securing it. But now maybe that's what the 12
temples, the 12 temples.
Like maybe that's what this year is. This year that coding of the light body is like, it's time to bring all those disparate parts together and synthesize them as our knowledge, whether we're Tesla in Colorado Springs, or we're like in the foot of the Himalayas chanting for decades.
You know what I've tried recently, and I know it sounds similar to what we've done, and I'm not saying this is different, but so how like, okay, I don't know how it works for you, but like if I want to tap in to whatever I want, let's say Tesla, right? Like I wonder what it was like to be Tesla in Colorado Springs on a dark night at 3:00 in the morning. Here's a man who never got married for a specific reason. I mean, he was totally dedicated. What was his life like? What was that? What was the exchange like? How was his cosmic connection? So I go into that energetic field, into that part of the universe, and I sit in there, not invading anything, but just being that. Because it's part of me, right? And I've noticed that, and I've been playing with this more and more, but I've noticed over the last, I want to say probably about 6 weeks, that when I do that, it's so fucking real. It scares me. It scared me at first. I thought, wow, am I invading some space? Am I doing something? But it was just, it's so real. Like, and I got to believe that that's got something to do with how we've expanded collectively. And this is actually following the timeline that you were talking about from what, like 12/21, December 20.
Yeah. If you're unlocking a deeper level of your interface with your own DNA, like you're unlocking the holographic, it's like that's in you, it's coded in you. Yeah. So you're waking it up, like you are actually like, it's not like you could become Tesla. I don't mean it like, but you are, like you're unlocking that aspect of you.
Like it's the way I would describe it like this. I want to know how it feels. And when I say feel, I don't mean like, that, I mean, you know what I mean? Like how it feels energetically.
You want to go into that collective, you want to go into that consciousness. consciousness.
I just want to, yeah, it's like a merging. I
Yeah,
just want to, and what I found was that, because I've done it before, all right, but it never like this. Like this started happening, I don't know exactly when, but I would say on or about 12/12, 12/15, December 15th, whatever. But what I noticed was the clarity of it. Like I was like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Like, am I invading on somebody's soul or something? It was like that. And I knew I wasn't, but it was that intense. But it's, yeah, you just, for me, it's just like, I just want to feel it. And I know by feeling it, that it brings me whatever information that I was seeking, either consciously or not. I don't know. I just thought I'd ask you because you're a scientist.
yeah, it's the merge. That's
Hmm.
merging in the field, the unity field. It's all here. It's all.
Yeah.
Like before that, there was that act of like, going to the Akashic records and downloading content from that's not the paradigm anymore.
Yeah.
It's all like in the crystalline grids, the light grids, the plasma grids. It's all like quantumly, instantly available.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
All right, man. We're just have to do this again in a few weeks.
I know. I love talking to you, Todd. It's fun.
Well, we're on to something. I mean, your information needs to get out there, and in a year from now, instead of me putting up Robert Sepper's book, not that I won't, because I absolutely adore the guy, and somebody else putting up Bruce Lipton Epigenetics, but we should be putting up your books or your. No, because I mean, this is the whole thing, and we could go on forever, but I got to get ready for the next show. But I was told 10 years ago when I rewoke a lot of things, and they were collective messages. But one of the things was everything that you're doing, every word that you write, every production that you put out is basically the new sacred book. So, there is something to be said that what's in your head is in the field and will be available for those that come next. But I think one thing we are learning is the expanding meaning of embodiment. And I think just like the example you gave with the scientists mapping out the journey for the rocket to Mars, there is an energetic imprint there, but when that physical thing happens, there's a huge integration that doesn't happen otherwise. And I think that's why it's important. So
I'm like, I know I was like for myself, as you were talking, what came through me is like, I can do all this in the society that we've been living in. Like, I have a 5-year-old. We've been home for a year. I have no childcare, and this is what I can accomplish. Imagine when my kids get a little older, what I can do.
Yeah, right.
Like my limiting factor in my book coming out is like honestly a childcare equation. But it's like,
well, yeah. I mean, think about it.
Relax into it. This is the moment. This is what mothering during the pandemic looks like. It's like on the floor playing Legos, and that's building codes too. That's part of it.
Right, it is.
Oh, I'm going to say maybe we can go out on this. I'm going to talk about to all the parents out there. So I had this last March. I really wanted to be doing my techie researchy stuff, but yet everything was like no school. We're all home. So my daughter has baby dolls. She has 7 dolls, and she my last year March was like, we wake up all the babies, we change their diapers, diapers, we feed them breakfast, we have to line them up in a certain way, we have to get them dressed, and she wants me to help her with all this. So a large part of my day is baby dolls for all of March 2020 and April. So we were doing all this, and I was just like, oh my God, again. And it was like lunchtime comes, and parents all out there will get, I was like, oh my God, we got to put them to bed 12 days later of this. I was like, what is happening? So then she said to me, Mama, we have to take care of the 7 sisters. And I had one of those moments where my brain just exploded. I was like, we're taking care of the Pleiades, the 7 sisters. She said the 7 sisters to me. I'm like, we're just doing it baby doll style. So you can code with anything. You can exchange, you can get the information. Anyway, follow the kids. They're doing it.
Yeah, man. And well, think about it too. Cause my grandmother washed clothes with a washing board. Or then one of those hand turners, right?
Your mom?
And then, my grandmother,
okay.
Right? I'm using, and she did, but I mean, but so each generation moves up in technology, right? So we're sitting here, you know,
Right.
like talking about books, for instance, right? And we're talking when we have these children, and these children and their children are going to be like in a totally different, like it's going to be like that archaic, you know, like it's archaic to consider you got a washboard and you're scrubbing your
Right.
clothes all day long.
Right. Imagine.
So yeah,
They're gonna be like, oh, they've got to watch it. Like that Todd and Julie had that conversation 100 years ago about like
they're going to be watching us if we're
time,
black and white,
and they're gonna be like doing it
right?
every day. And yeah,
If we're black and white TV, you know.
totally.
All right, I love you. I'll see you later.
Thanks, everybody. This is really
Sorry I kept you so long, but you know it was fun. Okay, I'll see
beautiful.
you. All right. Hey, all blessings to you and yours. Okay.
Thank you, Todd. Bye.